Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I don't really have a specific line of content in mind with this platform. I kind of just want to join the YouTube community with my own content after being a fan of the YouTube Warhammer community for so long now. So we're going to talk about Lumineth today and their problem as such. So Lumineth, they're broken, right? The most OP book that GW's put out in AOS in recent times. Well, that's what you might be thinking if you listen to the more polarized side of the community anyways. So, I'm not really what you would describe as a competitive gamer. Other armies would paint that picture probably better than my words would have you believe. So why the Lumineth? Well, to put it quite simply, I just really enjoy elves. I'm that guy. Ever since watching Lord of the Rings for the first time and seeing elves at Helm's Deep, I was enraptured. Then came the Lord of the Rings miniature game, with a magazine with all the miniatures. My old friend basically got me involved in that by just showing me it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, as we were both quite avid fans of the franchise in general. And hobby-wise, I've been hooked ever since, give or take. But I too fell foul of the whole hobby exodus, where basically you hit that certain age in life and decide that you've been wasted as a model soldier enthusiast and decide to become the greatest rock star of all time. And then, of course, scales come into the picture. But a quick spoiler, I've never been particularly accomplished in either of those affairs. So my hobby then turned, once I got back into it again, into like Warhammer 40k, as I got a bit older, with the Eldar, so again, a strong elven theme there. And then Warhammer Fantasy, again I got a bit more older and more mature with that, as the rulebooks were insane. And if you guys ever played, remember having a lug around those things to local games, and I still have the spinal damage to show for it. But yeah, so I came back. I kind of left the hobby after Fantasy died. It kind of just took a lot of wind out of the sails for me, because I spent a lot of time and money building and working on army, and just for it all become defunct, I felt quite deflated. As any of you guys that may have been around that time probably would be able to basically say the same. So I came back into the hobby proper about 4 years ago, but I only stuck to the 40k side because the initial release of Age of Sigmar was kind of tainted by the fact that it was just completely removing the fact of fantasy, and that kind of sucked quite hard for me. So I kind of had a bit of a hate for Sigmar. Without any real reason to, other than the fact it didn't have any points or anything crazy like that, which was a bit strange, but hey. Anyway, so I got back into it with 40k, played Eldar again, Harlequins, etc., fun times. But I got back into Age of Sigmar, with a Blades of Khorne release when the new book came out halfway through Age of Sigmar 2. This was more due to the competitive nature and cutthroat nature of the 40k scene in my area. As I said before, I'm not really a competitive gamer, so it kind of sucked quite hard getting beat over the head with all this cheese that I really just wasn't equipped to deal with. So I played a few armies in Age of Sigmar for a while. Blades of Khorne, Beasts of Chaos and Nighthaunt. Also Ogres, great times. So as you can imagine, not exactly cutthroat kind of armies, but they've all got great model ranges, and a lot of them kind of hail back into the armies of old, which is probably why I played them, to be honest. And then obviously the announcement for Lumineth came out, which was fantastic. I was very excited because the Venari elements, at least, were the reimagined High Elves of old, which really made me quite happy. I thought that the Wardens were absolutely fantastic, but Old Man Techless perhaps not so much. So come release day, I grabbed the special release box and got to work straight away. Progress was slow due to work commitments and ongoing pandemic and all that sort of nonsense. And my game aspect of the hobby pretty much died off with the pandemic itself, obviously. So I hit hobby mode full time. And ever since the release, I was only really interested in the Venari stuff and just got to work with that. So I was happy with the elves, if not swamped with all the intricate details on the models, and my inner perfectionist not wanting to rush this project to completion. I wanted to really put the time in making this force the pinnacle of my hobby to date. However, I did start to notice murmurs of the power of these guys, kind of starting to boil over in the normal groups I follow on Facebook and stuff like that. Initially, I leaned into this as I'd never really had a powerful army in AOS, and I'd fallen foul of some particularly nasty books with my poor Venn diagram ham-fisted corn book. So it was something I decided was going to work out for me, and I actually look forward to. Obviously, when the time I was actually allowed out to play games again, that's a big if, but hey. The list of models we had at the time was quite limiting, but I wasn't really looking at lists at the time. I was just like, oh, well, these models look cool, and my elves are back, so great. In my eyes, I kind of had everything I wanted from the book, really. I had like a badass suit of ghost armor, which is kind of Elfarian from back in the day of fantasy. I had phalanxes of 300 Spartan pike elves, updated sleek silver helms with hands which weren't the size of their own heads, and these new black powder laser bows of mass destruction. It's kind of just as 13-year-old me saw how those elves on the battlements of the Deeping Wall, just nuking the shit out of all the Uruk-hai with these mortal wounds. So I was like, this is great, fantastic. But obviously there was still the small issue of the pandemic, so I didn't think too much about it gameplay wise, and just cracked on painting them. So much before I even managed to get a game or make a sizable dent in the amount of plastic I'd managed to accrue over the Christmas period that year, we had the trailer drop for even more elves in another book. Seeing the silhouettes of some of the units we were soon to receive, including the Bolt Thrower and Blade Lords, I was over the moon. If not slightly annoyed about the new book, but hey, whatever. This kind of just started to build even more annoyance within the community, as we've already seemed to have quite a powerful book, even though no one's really played it outside of TTS. Techlist was still kind of the skies falling in the power level sort of thing with the community, and here we are getting even more stuff, so the salt obviously began to flow. So come the release day of the new book and the models, and the fallout of the Score Seeker, and the horrific gotcha moments caused by the goading arrogance Cathalar, and a number of other things lying in wait for those that are still woefully ill-equipped to deal with this book, and due to being out of practice and not playing the elves before. So I was able to get my first game in, and suddenly I was kind of aware of something I hadn't really thought about too much, and this was that we had way too many rules. This was an issue both as a player of the army and also as an opponent. It was a quagmire for me to try and keep in mind all of the situational rules and the basic army rules for my army throughout a game. On top of that, you've got to kind of factor in your opponent's counter plays, and what my opponent probably thought was that I was making stuff up at every turn, as I definitely seemed to have an answer for everything that he tried to throw at me. Also, the way I said it probably didn't help, because I kind of had the shaky confidence in my own rules knowledge that kind of looked the part of a would-be Chancellor. Now, so Lumineth, we're an elite army, and GW normally make their elite armies by having all their attacks hit on 2s, they wound on 2s, high armor saves, or loads of wounds. So basically they hit hard and they stay around forever. So they hit hard and tank hard. And this very basically kind of conveys the point to myself anyways, the point of being elite, that they don't just get destroyed by a stiff wind. But the thing is, with these kind of elite units, they always play the game by the rules. They follow the rules and the flow of the game. And this is where Lumineth kind of buck the trend here. They bend the rules in their favour and actually stop opponents from using their own rules. Some of these abilities are brutally powerful in certain instances, and others less so. But win or lose, there is one constant with the Lumineth, and it's that they leave a sour taste in your mouth. This is the NPE factor, so the negative play experience. I've been steamrolled by an opponent that's still called my army broken during the game. I've had similar experiences with my Eldar of old, because of the way they bend the elements of gameplay which normally just work for our opponents, and they can feel this as excessive, especially with Lumineth and our strong magic phase. With Teclis at the helm, if you really lean into the magic element of Lumineth, you can easily see how other books just don't have any way of answering this threat, because there's just not a huge counter unless you're rocking something like Nagash yourself. So for you just to be able to just destroy their command abilities, stop them from moving, it can really just have severe ramifications to certain armies and affect their playstyle, which has a knock-on effect to that person's enjoyment of the game, as they're not really doing what the army is supposed to do, and thus they're not really having fun. Now, with a new book, the addition of the Alumnia sub-faction was possibly the best thing to come out of it in my eyes, as it still allows us to feel strong, but it doesn't have the same sucker punch feel of what that of Sayar would have. Obviously with their very powerful abilities of the extra ether quartz, and again mentioning the golden arrogance, which I honestly felt bad after taking this to a local pickup games. My enjoyment of the elves quickly soured as time went on from negative reactions about the mere mention of me playing Lumineth to my opponent. They'd not even looked at my list, but the eye rolls began. The crux of the matter here, and what really annoyed me, was that these are the same people who have just been bending over the local club members with the old Seraphon Croclis or Zinch Archeon filth. But there is just something about the Lumineth in their eyes that makes people believe that I'm bringing a nuke named Fluffy to a knife fight. So what needs addressing within the Lumineth to make some balance, in my opinion? Well, to be honest with you, I'm probably not the right person to say, but I've kind of set this video up in a way that you'd almost be expecting an answer, so I'll just try and have a go. Okay, so what needs addressing within the Lumineth to make them balanced, in my opinion? So I'd say Sentinels could probably stand to take a 25 points increase per unit of 10. Or we could do something with removing the ignore line of sight stuff. I think that needs adjustment because it's just a real feels bad again. It kind of runs in the trend with Lumineth, but obviously there are other armies out there which have powerful shooting, but nothing that's quite like Mortals on 5s, and also just you can't escape from using cover. It kind of, again, fundamentally breaks that core component of the game, which I think people just often throw their hands up and just like, what am I going to do about this? And I can certainly see that. I remember playing a game with my Sylvaneth versus Lumineth for the first time, and I know what Lumineth are capable of. But he removed all of my characters off the table on turn 1. He was taking 30 Sentinels and a couple of bolt throwers, but these guys were in like cover, etc. And it was just like, wow, these guys really are powerful. And that was a really crap feeling, to be honest. Another aspect of the book that needs adjusting is the foxes. I don't play foxes myself, mainly because I don't like the model and I'm all about the Venari. But the move in the opponent's phase is just weapons grade MPE if you're fighting an honest combat army. So that definitely needs to be looked at and just removed, to be honest. So talking about the army itself, if you're that way inclined, you can look at the stats provided by much other astute members of the community. You'll see that we're not overly dominating the top tables with clean 5-0s. And I think that this is further compounded in the casual scene, as again, we're not winning every game that we play. I've got a fairly average win-loss record. I'm not the best player, but again, I'm not taking crazy lists either. But the one thing I take away from it is that we do one thing better than everybody else, and that's just piss people off. Now, I don't know if that was implemented on purpose or it was a clear design feature to kind of go with the whole elements of lore with the elven arrogance, etc. But I think it is kind of here to stay with us, guys. Obviously, with the two books, it's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people, and I think that this kind of general feeling about the Lumineth will remain for a long time. By no means are we a weak book, and I understand that we are quite a powerful book at that. But it's just the NPE, I think, that just kind of makes us that next level, that just makes us feel very, very powerful, and that people just don't want to play us. And I think that's just a real shame, because they're a beautiful army to see on the table. And I myself am very proud of my Lumineth army, and I think a lot of other people have as well. And there are a lot of people in the community that have spent an egregious amount of time and detail on the Lumineth army, building their own lore and very beautiful custom models and stuff. It is a real shame, but unfortunately it just seems that the MPE is what's going to always get us at the end of the day. And even if we took a bunch of nerfs and we just still remain some of that gamey NPE that we've got, I think we're always kind of been looked down on as them guys. It's a pain, but it was the same with the Eldar back in 7th edition, I think it was, with the Wave Serpents. I'd been playing them since 5th, and just getting my head beat over with steel chairs off the top rope every weekend with my Ulthwee. But as soon as 7th came out, I was that guy. It's just a cross we will have to bear. So yeah, guys, I don't really know what the intent of this video was really. I just kind of want to show that put my thoughts out there about what the problem with the Lumineth are. We definitely have some powerful units, but I think it's the rules and just the negative play experienced by people is what's always going to tar our name to some degree. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, guys. I'd love to hear yours as well. So I tried to structure my thoughts here a little bit on the Lumineth, but it's all kind of gone a little bit off the rails. So thanks for sticking around if you got this far. Fellow Lumineth players, have you experienced anything like this? Am I the only one? I can't be the only one. To be honest with you, I kind of want Lumineth to just get nuked with a big old nerf. Finally stop all the whinging and crying at this point. It's kind of really put me off playing my elves. And opponents, of course, of Lumineth. Please share your experiences. What do you reckon that should be done to try and combat these guys? And what realistic balance issues do you think that sit there with the Lumineth themselves? Love to hear your thoughts and feedback. This is my first video, obviously, and I really appreciate if you have stuck around this long. Any thoughts and feedback would be really appreciated, and I'll catch you again soon. Cheers!